Johnny hadn't moved. Edgar stood awkwardly near him for a few seconds, holding the blanket before he decided to sit down again. He thought that sitting beside Johnny might have been invading his personal space a little too actively, so he returned to his spot across from him. He sat down and held the blanket out to Johnny, who finally moved again. He stared at it for a few seconds in confusion.
He probably doesn't remember being cold at all.
He eventually did take it, throwing it around his shoulders hesitantly. Edgar. Johnny pulled the blanket tight around himself and didn't meet Edgar's eyes. I want to know. What? What do you want? What? I want to know what your perfection is. Maybe I'm not looking at this the right way. What would be your perfection? With us, I mean. With me. Johnny looked up and stared at Edgar without blinking. A few seconds went by before Edgar realized his mouth was open.
Whoa. I didn't think he'd ever... Well, I mean, he never has before. I must say, this night has been rather atypical, even by my standards. Either way, you better think of a response. Actually, what would your response be? Now I'm curious myself. What would your perfection be? Oh God, I can't answer this question. I need to think about this. I can't just answer this right away. I'll say something wrong. Edgar? Sorry. I'm just thinking. Frantically trying to say something non-incriminating. It's not something I thought about a lot. I mean, often. It's not something that crossed my mind often. It isn't? Johnny stared at him in confusion. Oh shit, not good, not good. I didn't mean that it isn't important or anything. I didn't mean that. Edgar was talking fast. I don't want you to think that. It's just... Yes, that's it. That's what I should have said. I've got it now. It's just... You never asked me that question before. There we go. I guess I wasn't really prepared. Johnny did not look soothed. He continued to stare at him critically. You better think of something to say fast, and hopefully it won't be something so blindingly stupid this time. My perfection. You don't think about that often? Oh God, how can I salvage this? There's gotta be a way. Well, I don't think of my relationships in terms of perfection, I guess. Or in terms of goals to be achieved. I hope I'm being clear. It's not so much reaching the end of something, or accomplishing something. I guess you could say that... Well, how did that one phrase go? It's not when you get there, but how? I guess that doesn't precisely apply, but I hope that makes sense. It should make sense. God, just stop talking. You sound like an idiot. Calm down. I see. Johnny put a hand to his mouth. He looked more curious than critical now,
which was an improvement with him by any stretch of the imagination.
You must have wanted something, though. That's only natural. I find it hard to believe that you wouldn't have wanted something from me, or wanted something from knowing me.
Johnny gave Edgar a familiar twisted smile.
While we do have our own interesting conversations, I don't think that could be our only motivation. I understand what you're saying, but I don't completely believe you. You must want something. You must be getting something from this relationship. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in it, correct?
This was a familiar tone. Quickly, Johnny's voice was leveling off for a rant.
It's a necessary part of any kind of relationship for all animals, particularly the glorified human one. We all want something from each other, even if it's just as abstract as happiness.
Johnny paused, then tilted his head.
You must want happiness out of this, right? That's a standard. Everyone wants to be happy, right? It would only make sense.
Edgar wasn't sure what to say to get himself out of this predicament. He scratched at his face and looked away.
You know, I'm impressed with our dear homicidal friend. He's backed you masterfully into a corner.
I'm sure that's what you would want, but that's not what I'm really interested in. That's the default of a relationship. That's what everyone's searching for. I would like to think that as real people, we're looking for something more substantial, more real, more permanent, more powerful. You and me, you know it too. That's why you're alive, you know. You're not like the others. You must want something else. You must have a goal, some kind of perfection. Something more than the mess of a relationship that everyone else happily binds themselves to. I know it. I want to know what it is.
Edgar kept scratching, now staring intently at his feet.
I can see what you mean. I guess I didn't really think of it that way.
You understand what I'm asking you, then?
Johnny nodded.
Maybe if I know what you really want, that will give me some clarification, some guidance as to what I should do.
Well, you can at least pretend it's for a good cause when you finally tell the truth. I'm not. I can't. I have to be more careful than ever now. This is going to be hilarious.
Johnny's foot brushed against Edgar's, and at the contact, they both jerked away. My perfection. The sound of rain far away.
What do you want us to be?
Johnny leaned forward and stared at Edgar intently.
What do you want me to be?
He hoped that didn't sound as uncomfortable to Johnny as it did to him.
Well, you've said it yourself before. You mention it a lot. But you said something recently that made me think. You said your actions and thoughts were under your control now. Does that mean you're not insane?
Johnny stared at Edgar, then grinned.
I'm still quite hideously insane, I'm afraid.
He didn't want to, or mean to, but Edgar sighed heavily at that. Johnny's grin faded.
I thought as much. Tell me. Uncharacteristically aggressive. Just a question.
Edgar stared down at his carpet hard. Grey. So much grey. Something hurt, but he wasn't sure what it was.
Are you still going to kill me?
Silence.
Of course,
Johnny whispered.
Why would that change?
I see.
Edgar.
His voice was still soft.
You understand, right? You understood before. You understand what it means. You understand why, don't you? You understand me. You're good at that. You know, right?
He sounded increasingly panicky. Edgar wanted to say something calming, soothing, reassuring. Instead, his voice stayed emotionless.
I do understand. But you wanted to know, didn't you? I can't believe you actually said that.
Somehow, it seemed Johnny didn't think that Edgar's perfection would be something he didn't want to hear. He nodded reluctantly.
Nee, I want to see this to the end. I don't want to give up halfway through.
That's not the point.
He seemed desperate to change the subject. Edgar didn't exactly want to argue with him, particularly when he seemed this upset.
You don't want to stay in this relationship just for the sake of being in the relationship, do you?
No, of course not. He didn't think it would sound like that.
That's not... I didn't think so. That's not what you really want.
Can't argue with him now. Not really, I guess.
But then what? What would be perfect for you? I love you so much, Edgar.
Edgar shivered violently, and he felt something sharp through his skin. A quick tingling pain beneath. He pulled his hand away from his face at the realization that he'd been scratching for God knows how long. Something glinted off his fingers in the blue light.
Oh God, not again.
What?
I just... Hold on.
Edgar stood up, then turned to look back down at Johnny.
I'm not avoiding the question. I just need to get some bandages for this. It'll take me a few seconds.
Johnny got a good look at Edgar's face.
Oh.
A pause to make sure there was no further objection. Then Edgar went into the bathroom.
This ought to be fun in the dark.
Edgar stumbled through the bathroom and nearly tripped over the clothes he had already forgotten about. He finally felt the sink and pulled open the medicine cabinet. There was a creak behind him, and blue light lit the small room. He saw his face in the mirror, dark shadows emphasized by the lantern and the smear of blood across his cheekbone. Johnny stood behind him, holding the lantern with two hands.
Thank you,
Edgar mumbled. Johnny made a noise to acknowledge him, but didn't say anything. It took a few minutes for Edgar to find and apply the bandages to his open cut. It wasn't the cleanest or most effective covering possible, but it would work. He turned around, and Johnny was still standing in the bathroom doorway, staring at him.
My perfection.
I would never hurt you.
Stop it, oh God, not now, not now.
You fixed me.
I think...
Edgar struggled to ignore Scriabin as he made his way out of the bathroom back to the hallway.
I think it would... I think there would be no more fear.
He wasn't sure what he would say until he said it, and it didn't register until Johnny spoke.
Fear?
Oh God, I hope that wasn't a mistake.
I think that the most perfect place we could ever be would be when we're not afraid of each other. Or at least, when I'm not afraid of you.
Liar,
Scriabin sang in his head.
liar, liar.
Johnny adjusted the blanket around his shoulders and brushed past Edgar, continuing down the hallway. Edgar saw no choice but to follow him.
Frightened.
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
Johnny walked into Edgar's bedroom. Edgar wasn't sure what he wanted, but he followed him inside. I think it could be. Yes.
That we could be perfect? Like the others?
He seems to forget that I don't know who the others were.
I think it's possible.
Edgar, you do realize that your statement could be interpreted as saying that you could, potentially, fall in love with him. That's not what I meant, but that's what it means.
Johnny was at Edgar's window, staring outside at the cloudy sky, maybe looking for the moon. He wasn't sure.
You think I can do it?
I think we can do it. That's how it works, right? Edgar slowly walked over and stood beside him. Johnny did not look at him, holding the blanket close with one hand and using the other to support the lantern. There was a moment of silence. Then Johnny turned towards him. Edgar instinctively matched the motion, and the two stared at each other for a while the rain beat down inches away. The sound was much louder here. Johnny stared at him, and Edgar couldn't read the expression on his face. He had the sense that Johnny wanted something from him, but he didn't know what it was. They only stood inches apart, and still Edgar couldn't read him. Couldn't tell what he wanted. The lantern light flickered, and then a flash of lightning lit the room brightly for a second. A rumble of thunder, and they didn't move. Minutes passed. How many, Edgar wasn't sure. Edgar couldn't take his eyes away from Johnny. It was almost as if this was some kind of challenge, some kind of test to see whether or not he was telling the truth.
And you say I read too much into things.
Edgar would have preferred awkward silence than Scriabin speaking up again.
And God knows, I so often listen to what you want me to do. I don't know what he wants. God, how long has he been staring at me? Are you asking me? Ha! He must want something. But we've been quiet so long. I don't know how to break the silence. I can't exactly remember the last thing I said. Or the last thing he said either. You know, I've been giving you advice for so long now, and yet somehow, I don't feel exactly inclined to do that right now. I want answers for once.
Edgar was trying to ignore the intruder to his mental deconstruction of his current situation.
It was something about the two of us trying to... Well, not exactly. Trying to make this relationship fearless. Is that what he's doing now? Not doing anything to show me that he isn't dangerous? Do you honestly think he would think that far ahead? Do you honestly think this psychopath could plan that far ahead? Do you really, truly think that if you made Johnny angry for whatever stupid, trivial reason, he wouldn't just kill you right now? To hell with his ideal of perfection. Do you honestly think he has that much control over himself, Edgar? He makes a big show of being able to control himself now, with all that blathering about actions and consequences, and what makes a person yap, yap, yap. But do you think anything has changed? Do you think anything has changed, Edgar? Do you? You can't. You can't, because I would imagine you're not as stupid of an idealist as you act at times. You know, Edgar. You know as well as I do. He said so himself. He's insane. You're in no better position than before, regardless of how fond he gets of you. He could still kill you. He will still kill you. And he could potentially try to murder you at any time, in any place, for any reason. Not just because you two finally exchanged some chaste kiss in an appropriately romantic setting, and he put the gun to your chin and you pulled the trigger, despite the fact that for some horrible, horrible reason, you don't find that idea that reprehensible. There's a very slim chance that that will happen.
Edgar wasn't sure what he was staring at anymore. His internal conversation had drained all of his focus. Scriabin's voice was increasing in volume.
There is almost no possibility, no chance that you can survive this, Edgar, and yet you still cling to this romantic ideal. God, you even said you'd work for these arsenic-laden candies. You said you wanted to help him. For God's sake, Edgar, you can't. I've told you before, you can't. Unless you can wave your hand and cure whatever sick thing is eating his mind, you will never be happy with Nee. You will never be at ease around Nee, because there is no way that any sane person could not be afraid of Nee. Johnny is fear. Johnny is death. He is random, unpredictable, and will come at the worst possible time. You know this, Edgar. You are making empty promises that you're covering with even emptier pretenses. You aren't doing this for him. You've never been doing this for him. Not since you relegated him from the prestigious role of experiment in your mind. This is for you, Edgar. This is for your continued existence. This is for your pathetic, worthless, empty life. You can pretend and lie and do everything you want to deny it, but there is no way, Edgar. There is no way that you can ever be happy with Nee. You can never be happy with him because he will always hurt you. He will always hurt you, even if you somehow do get past the whole killing you thing. Do you think that if Johnny never intended to kill you, that you'd have a better relationship? Do you think that even having Johnny as a boyfriend would be possible? Do you think, for even those few seconds, that Johnny is even capable of loving someone at all? That he knows what to do, that he knows how to compromise, that he would ever care about you enough to modify his own behavior for your happiness, like you constantly do with him? Do you think that, Edgar? Do you? He's not. Don't even bother, Edgar. That's not the point, and you know it. That's not what I'm talking about. Stop holding on to illusions and listen to me. Even if Johnny doesn't kill you, he will hurt you. He will never care about you. This entire scheme of his, this entire elaborate thing is planned around his perfection, not yours. He asked you for yours because it would help him decide what to do. Johnny will kill you when he feels this relationship is perfect. and he will kill you because it will make him happy. And you haven't even contested this. You dare even entertain thoughts of some semblance of an equal relationship with him. You even try to bargain with him to regain some of yourself, and you're losing. He's a maniac, a psychopath, a murderer. He can't understand other human emotions. He never will. Everyone he's ever loved, he's killed. And he can't see anything wrong with that. Forgive me if I seem presumptuous, but somehow I don't think you're going to be lucky number 11, or however many poor victims he's killed. You're not going to change a thing. You can't change him. You never could. You're being dragged along in this abusive, illogical charade because you can't stand up for yourself, and you have a bad habit of believing in the impossible. You think you can fix him. You think that it won't be you. You think that just because you've managed to get away from him, however many times, that you'll be able to make it. You'll succeed where others have failed. You'll change Johnny. God, Edgar, you think you can change Johnny's entire philosophy of life because you're that important. How can you be so naive? How can you be so stupid?
Edgar's mouth was dry, and he felt intensely dizzy. He was staring past Johnny's eyes, through them, but he didn't know at what. Light off his glasses, and he was seeing double again. He wanted to lie down.
I don't love Johnny. I never have. That's not the point, Edgar. Jesus Christ. If I could fucking slap you across the face right now, I would. Have you been paying attention at all tonight? At all? You wanted him to be alive. And when Johnny said that his actions were his own, and he asked you if that mattered, you said it didn't. God, Edgar, you're buying into your own fantasy. You want to believe that Johnny can change so badly. You're pathetic. Were you paying attention? Do you know what comes out of your mouth? God, you said you wanted to help. That you wanted to try and reach whatever random definition of perfection Johnny has. You're his toy. That's what you are. That's how he treats you, Edgar. You're Johnny's toy. You're something shiny and nice that listens but never fights back. Just pull the string and he'll say whatever you want. And then when Johnny is tired of you, has had all the fun he wants to have, he'll pop your head off. He'll rip you apart like he would before. Pushing back the inevitable. Johnny has never treated you with any kind of respect. And he never will. He's completely and totally self-centered. He can think of no one but himself. Maybe it's him personally, or maybe it's his own faulty wiring, but it doesn't particularly matter either way, because he can never care about you. Just to avoid that favorite shield of yours, even as a friend, Johnny can't care about you. He doesn't care about you. He's using you, Edgar. He's using you as a means to an end. He's using you to make himself happy. You're a toy to him, Edgar. You're a plaything. He's using you, Edgar. He always has been using you. And every single time he initiates contact with you, it's because he wants to use you.
That's not true. Edgar felt something at the back of his mind. Something spreading like when he snapped his head back too fast, and he wanted to reach out a hand to steady himself. But Johnny was still staring at him, and he couldn't move. He felt sick.
There is nothing for you in this relationship, Edgar. There never will be. You will die, and you will curse yourself for being one of the greatest fools the world has ever known because you just could not listen. You had to believe. You had to trust. And you had to let Johnny pull that string in your back that says, yes, of course, do whatever you want. And let him put the gun in your mouth. He just wants to hurt you, Edgar. No matter how tenderly he may express his awkward affections, presuming that he can do so at all, he will still hurt you. And he will tell you he loves you. He will touch your arm and kiss you, and maybe someday even fuck you. But it will be because those are the steps to his ultimate end. He will do these things to you. He will buy you things and be nice to you, because that way he will be able to hurt you. The nicer he acts, the sooner he gets to tear that all too often silent windpipe out of your offered throat. Are you listening, Edgar? Tell me what I'm saying isn't true. Tell me that you can look right into Johnny's eyes, now or 50 years from now, and tell me that he won't hurt you. Tell me that he won't snap. Tell me that he won't lose that fragile grip on reality he holds so precious and destroy the anchor he pretends to love.
Spinning. The room was spinning.
Tell me, Edgar. Tell me, or call me a liar, like you always do. Go ahead. Go ahead and try. Tell me you can trust him.
Was he moving?
Say it, Edgar. Say it!
He hadn't been staring at anything in particular, but movement finally broke through. Edgar immediately tried to focus his attention on Johnny, but found that he couldn't hear anything. Mouthing words. Johnny was mouthing words. Edgar couldn't ask Johnny to lift the lamp or enunciate, and in the darkness he couldn't make it out. He could feel Scriabin's residual resentment and anger in his mind, and he knew this was far from over.
Are you there?
Johnny tilted his head at him slightly.
Edgar, how do you solve a problem?
He moved, and then Edgar found he could move as well. He stumbled forward awkwardly. Johnny stepped back in surprise. The hand holding the lantern moved to one side, and the other held forward as if to ward Edgar away.
You can't say it, can you?
At that point, Edgar was aware he had made some kind of strange, pained noise, though he couldn't exactly pin down what it was. He pulled back from Johnny quickly, barely noticed the look of surprise on his face before he turned towards his bed. His feet dragged on the floor. Just...
Edgar, what's wrong?
He tripped the last few inches and fell onto his bed heavily. His glasses landed somewhere, but it wasn't like it mattered in the dark anyway. The dizziness was pushing up beneath his eyes, and he gripped fabric in his fists as tightly as he could.
You can't tell me I'm wrong, because I'm right, Edgar.
At the sound of his voice again, Edgar felt everything shift 90 degrees.
You know I am. I always have been. You never wanted to listen to me. You never followed my advice. And now look at where you are. Look at what you're doing. Look at yourself. Admit it. Admit it. I'm right. You will never be happy. You can't be happy. You'll never even get close.
Shut up. Was he biting the blanket? When did he start doing that? He felt something touch his back, the clack of something on his desk.
Edgar, what's wrong? What's happening?
He's not asking for you.
God, please stop.
He's not asking for you. He's asking because if you got sick, or if you were sad, or if you were unhappy, that might put a damper on his plans. And his plans are all that matter to him. You're unimportant as a person, Edgar. You're important as a concept. You are important as long as he needs you. Then you die. You are nothing to him. None of your fears, nothing about you, nothing about your life, nothing about your past or your future matters to him. You are a thing. You are a thing he can project himself onto. You are a thing he can use for his own satisfaction. You are a wall. You are disposable, expendable, temporary. You will never be anything more to him, Edgar. You will never be anything more than a glorified wind-up doll.
Stop. Please. Please.
He felt a rapid-fire series of touches across his body. A finger glanced across his arm, hands cupped his face, smoothed back his hair, tugged at the bandage accidentally, pulled at his teeth. No, pulled the blanket out of his teeth. A finger accidentally jabbed him in the eye.
Edgar! Edgar! Edgar, stop!
Stop. Is this what you wanted out of your life, Edgar? Is this what you wanted? Did you want to commit suicide in the most passive-aggressive way possible? God, Edgar, why? Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you letting him do this to you? Even the little wide-eyed boy, Bui, or whatever his name was, even he protested. Even he knew enough to stay away. But no. You had to change things. You had to be the savior. You had to come in on a white horse. Had to come in and look at you now. Look at you. You're a liar. You've lied to yourself and to me and to everyone. You've lied to Johnny because you believed he could change, and he can't. You lied to him because you said we could do this, and we can't. You know what will happen, Edgar? Do you know what will happen the next few days, years, months? You will change. You will edit your life, your speech, your time. You will cater to his every whim, and he will throw you away. He will tear the life out of your body and laugh at each moment because he does not care about you. He never has. All of this was a lie. Johnny can't love. He can't love you. He can't love because to love is to not be selfish once in your life. And Johnny's love is for him. It is not for you. You are a tool. You are his slave.
A rumble of thunder shook the room, and Edgar couldn't remember the lightning flash that accompanied it. He could focus his eyes again. He could see, and Johnny's face hovered above his own. Even with the limited light, Edgar could tell he looked deeply concerned.
Edgar, are you listening? Are you here? Are you okay? Fuck, Edgar, are you okay?
A constant stream of questions that Edgar just realized had been the background of Scriabin's tirade the entire time. Was he dreaming? Did he actually touch him? Edgar was lying on his bed properly now, and he didn't remember doing that himself. The last few minutes were a blur. The voice in his head was silent for reasons Edgar couldn't understand. He didn't think it would last long.
Are you okay? Oh, shit. I didn't mean to. I didn't think... It was a normal question. I thought it was a normal question. Are you okay? Can you hear me?
And then Johnny reached out and touched his face. His fingertips touched the bandage beneath his eye, moved down his cheek. He tilted Edgar's head slightly, and Edgar's viewpoint changed. He hadn't realized he'd been staring fixedly in one direction.
He touched me.
Edgar coughed sharply and felt as if the back of his throat suffered for it. Johnny immediately pulled back his hand as if he feared he'd get bitten. Edgar looked back at Johnny and realized he was breathing hard.
Edgar?
Johnny's voice took on a higher pitch.
Edgar, are you awake?
Edgar lifted one of his own hands and stared at it for a few seconds. His voice was hoarse.
I think so.
Fucking... You started... I don't even know what that was. It was like some kind of weird seizure.
Johnny trailed off, moving his eyes from Edgar to stare at something Edgar could not readily see.
I'm sorry.
It was the first thing that came out of his mouth, and he instantly regretted it.
You're sorry?
Johnny's eyes snapped back to his.
Sorry for what?
Edgar slowly levered himself up. He noticed that Johnny raised a hand near him, hovered it above his skin, but did not actually touch him. A precaution. He sat up and closed his eyes for a few seconds.
I don't really know what just happened.
When he opened his eyes, Johnny just stared.
You've always lied to him.
Edgar buried a hand in his hair and caught his breath.
I'm not sure. That's never happened before.
There was a pause. Johnny shifted his position, so he was sitting completely on the bed, his legs crossed.
Never happened before.
No. Edgar wanted to study Johnny's face, wanted to see how Johnny was taking this, but everything was fuzzy and dark. Too far away now.
Edgar.
He moved, but Edgar couldn't tell how.
Do you think it'll happen again?
I don't know. I hope not.
He winced.
What caused it?
I'm not sure. I just started feeling dizzy. Had to lie down.
Edgar rubbed at the back of his neck.
Maybe I just need to eat something.
A short pause this time.
You don't think it was something serious?
Not really.
Edgar didn't look at him.
I think I think I can handle it. Ha! Sure, you handled that well.
Johnny sighed after this news, and it seemed that it wasn't the bad kind. Edgar couldn't say for sure.
What did you ask me again?
What?
You asked me something before.
Johnny stared down at his hands.
Something.
Edgar waited.
I remember. I wanted to know how you solved a problem.
Yes, do tell, Edgar. You're so good at that kind of thing.
This kind of mockery Edgar could at least handle.
Solving problems.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I guess I would make sure I understood the problem first.
Edgar leaned back on the pillow. He felt a little less dizzy that way. He noticed that Johnny edged closer to him in the process.
Make sure I knew all the angles, all the possibilities, all the reasons I wanted to solve the problem. Information, really.
Edgar hoped he wasn't rambling.
Information really is the key for that kind of thing.
So you make sure you know everything.
Yeah. Then, I guess you draw up a list of all the possible solutions that problem could have.
Edgar felt increasingly disinclined to talk. He kept his mouth moving.
All the possibilities, no matter how silly or stupid. That kind of thing.
He was kind of drifting off. Was he just tired, or was he just emotionally drained? He wasn't sure. He probably shouldn't have lain down, now that he thought about it. There was a silence, and Edgar could hear the rain. He was beginning to hear things again. He hadn't noticed at the time that Scriabin's voice had grown louder and louder until it blocked everything out. It wasn't his lack of attention. It was that he honestly couldn't hear. At least, that would explain why his ears were ringing, wouldn't it?
Edgar.
Johnny's voice was soft and staticky. No, that was just his hearing.
Are you sure? Are you sure that you're okay?
Edgar let out a sigh and rested his arm across his eyes.
I'll be okay in a few minutes. I'm just tired, really. Feel tired.
The next words came out haltingly, and it was obvious that Johnny had found them hard to say.
Do you want to keep talking about this?
There.
Even Edgar's own mental thoughts sounded weak.
There. That was some modicum of concern. Edgar.
Scriabin sounded at once both spiteful and condescending.
Do you want me to start again? Do you really want me to deconstruct this for you? Do you want me to tell you the truth? Do you want to have another minor seizure because apparently the truth will make you crazy? Do you really want me to? Because I will. I just think that by now, maybe you can do that on your own. If I'm just a means to an end.
Edgar didn't have the heart to really argue. His voice faltered, and he was sure his logic was now less than solid. But he felt he had to say something.
Then why would he need me at all? His happiness. It depends on me to some level. Maybe it is selfish. Maybe it is all for him in the end, but he needs me in the process. He kept me alive this long because I have to care for him. Because the fact that I have to care about him in return is his perfection.
Edgar moved his arm and saw Johnny staring at him. He couldn't make out much without his glasses on, but he could see Johnny brush his hand over his bare head. That's what the motion had to be. It couldn't be much else.
Yes. I think that's it. Johnny's perfection would be my affection. It would be your love.
Scriabin sounded strangely emotionless.
Your love. Don't avoid the word.
But that means my feelings are important to him.
Edgar.
Scriabin no longer sounded angry.
I told you before. You're still thinking in terms of Johnny's ideal. That ideal of perfection that he wants to hold. But do you honestly think that that ideal will still be foremost on his mind if you, say, slapped him? If you yelled at him? If you kicked him out of your house and your life? Do you think he would come crawling back for your approval? He wouldn't, Edgar. And you know it. He would kill you. His ideal is a fantasy that makes being near him tolerable. Because that way you can pretend that he's not as insane as he is. You can pretend he has control over himself, over his actions. It's fake, Edgar. It's a lie. His concern for you. It's a lie. A pretense. And Neil will shed that pretense when you do the slightest thing to aggravate him. Do you understand?
He shuddered, but he found he couldn't move otherwise. He shook. His muscles were firing, but he couldn't control himself completely. Couldn't raise his arm. Weakness. Johnny still stared at him. He was more used to these pauses than Edgar was.
I'm sorry. We were talking about problems, weren't we?
Yes, Johnny nodded.
Do I want to talk more about this? Was that it?
Johnny turned towards the window.
I understand if you want to sleep. Whatever it was that happened. I understand if you don't want to talk about it anymore.
I have an idea.
Oh, what now?
Johnny, can I ask you something?
The flickering blue light made Johnny look like a skeleton for a few frightening seconds. Edgar could feel strength returning to him. He could control his motion again.
A question?
Kind of.
Edgar pushed himself up onto his elbows. He still couldn't see Johnny clearly. He would have to find his glasses later.
I want to know. You said you were still going to kill me, right?
Johnny nodded, although it was a little hesitant. Apparently he remembered that this was not high on Edgar's list of things he wanted.
Are you sure you'll kill me when that time comes?
If I know when it is.
Johnny's voice got softer as the conversation continued, pulling away.
Johnny, what do you... Well, do you think that you would ever break that promise? I know it's not exactly a promise, per se, but do you think that you would ever... Do you think you would lose control? Do you think you'd... Well, you said you were insane. Do you think that you might kill me before that time? For one reason or another?
I think he's going to kill you right now for that question.
Johnny looked directly into his eyes. He leaned forward, but Edgar still couldn't read his expression. The familiar tinges of fear.
Is that why you're afraid of me?
Johnny's voice was low.
You don't trust me.
Edgar wasn't sure how to respond.
I could lie, but he'd know I was lying. We were just talking about it. But
How can I tell him the truth without... This is exactly what I was talking about.
You're perfection.
Johnny seemed to be talking to himself. He was listening to one side.
I didn't mean...
Edgar turned his body, angled himself so he could look and speak with Johnny more directly. The light from the lantern vanished for a few seconds, and then Johnny hit the pillow. He fell without moving his arms and staring at nothing. Edgar pulled back from him for a few seconds, making sure that he wasn't too close. But Johnny didn't react. He didn't react to Edgar even when he decided that sitting up at this point was pointless, and lay back on the pillow himself. Inches apart again. But this time, Johnny was staring through Edgar.
He's gone. I told you.
Knee. Edgar kept his hands close to his chest. He knew how much Johnny hated touch. Even if he got this close on his own, Edgar didn't dare reach out to him. He didn't want to invade his personal space in any kind of way.
That's one of the more honest thoughts you've had all night. Just pure fear there. No ulterior motive, no cover-up. You're scared of making him angry, and that's all there is to it.
Your perfection is the lack of fear, isn't it?
Johnny's voice was emotionless.
That's what you said before. That means the most basic solution to that problem would be to remove the source of fear.
The pacing of his words sounds familiar.
That means you have to trust me.
Johnny blinked slowly, but he still didn't look at Edgar. It was like he wasn't there. They were inches apart, face to face on the same pillow, and Edgar couldn't have been further away.
That means I have to make you trust me. Well, not exactly. More like I have to earn your trust.
Edgar. What? Edgar. He's talking like you. What? Listen to him. The way he's phrasing his words. The way he's choosing them even. The pauses. He's talking like you. He's imitating your voice. No. That's not true. That's ridiculous. Just listen.
No sarcastic comment at his denial.
Just listen.
You don't trust me because well, I am insane for one thing. And there's the fact that I have hurt you in the past.
Johnny didn't move, although Edgar knew he was talking about the scars. Johnny's eyes did not move from whatever it was they were staring at.
You told me there are no guarantees in the future. That you could not promise me things could get better. There may be some truth to that, as I can't promise you that I won't hurt you in the future either, although I don't want to. I can't promise that I'll be sane, as much as I wish that I could. I can't promise that I'll always have control. I want control, certainly, but I don't know how long I'll have it. I don't know how long this period will last. I can't hear anything here. I haven't heard anything for a while. But it's a matter of time. I can't remember anything before it all started. It would only make sense that it may eventually start again.
He sounds just like you. Can't you tell? Listen to that. He's even pronouncing words the same way. I don't understand. Why would he do that?
But on the other hand, you said you thought it was possible.
Johnny's voice remained even throughout his entire speech, without emotion.
You told me that you were willing to try, or to learn to trust me. I guess the logical conclusion would be you were willing to put yourself at that risk. You said that you thought it was possible in the future. Things could get better. I don't know for sure that I'll become a slave for the universe again. I don't know for sure if things will get better. I don't know if I'll be able to protect you. I don't know if what's happening to you. Ignorance.
Edgar wanted to say something, but he couldn't think of anything to say.
Protect me from what? Himself?
Do you believe me, Edgar?
Johnny's eyes moved, and his voice regained a small amount of emotion. It was almost as if he had woken up from some kind of trance.
Do you trust my words, if not my future actions?
Edgar maintained eye contact as he faded back into Johnny's reality.
I think I've always trusted your words. However, as earlier times have shown, sometimes your actions are independent of your words.
You're so lucky he's so... what's the word? Robotic right now. I have a feeling he wouldn't have let that pass in one of his other moods.
Johnny's eyes flicked back and forth, and Edgar could guess that Johnny was studying his features. He was still imitating Edgar's speech pattern, although emotion was working its way through.
Do you believe me when I say that wasn't my intention?
Edgar couldn't nod in his current position.
I do.
Do you believe me when I say that I've been under some horrible monster's control for God knows how long, and I haven't been able to make my own choices in my life for as long as I can remember?
Normally, Edgar would have faltered at this question, but he was there, or at least he thought he was, when it had all ended.
I do, yes.
Do you think that now that that monster's gone, things could change? Do you think that I can become consistent?
Edgar ran the edge of the blanket through his fingers and could feel exhaustion creeping up on him again.
I definitely think that will lead to change. I can't say what kind, but things will definitely change. It would only make sense.
But I'm still crazy.
Edgar wasn't sure if he had to agree to that. He didn't say anything.
Do you think it's possible?
Johnny was still staring at him, not through him. A good sign.
Do you think it's possible that your fear is because of what I was before, and not what I could become?
I'd say it's possible.
Edgar blinked longer than he intended, and he snapped back to wakefulness with a mental curse. It was harder to resist falling asleep now he was laying down again.
Yeah, it's possible.
Johnny stared at him again. Probably because Edgar hadn't been trying particularly hard to hide the fact he was tired. He had no idea what time it was. Did he have work tomorrow? Didn't matter anyway. His alarm clock was shot without power.
Do you think there's a future for me?
Not for you, Edgar. For him. Note the lack of us.
At this point, he was too tired to care.
Sure.
Do you think I can get better?
Sure.
Edgar focused hard on keeping his eyes open. He found his attention drifting, and he was planning his words less cautiously than he rightly should.
Do you think we can be perfect?
Sure.
It occurred to him that it might sound suspicious if he just repeated himself.
I mean, yeah, I think it's possible. I said that before, didn't I?
Do you think you'll be okay?
Johnny's voice was getting softer. It sounded like he was whispering.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be fine.
Edgar glanced at the lantern on the desk.
I usually make it out of things okay.
You're not thinking straight.
Do you trust me? I mean, would you trust me with you?
What?
No.
Johnny didn't seem to have heard him.
You already did. Never mind. This is up to me now.
Yeah.
Edgar felt he had to contribute, although he wasn't sure what Johnny was talking about. At the time it seemed like a valid contribution, but Edgar was shifting in and out of wakefulness at that point. His eyes were closed. He wasn't sure if he should leave it at that. Had to say something.
I think we'll be okay.
The last thing he remembered saying. After that, he was dimly aware of someone touching him softly, maybe blankets moving, and then nothing else.